I love this question because, like you said, it's almost pop culture, isn't it? To talk about finding your passion, following your passion, and monetizing your passion if you're speaking to entrepreneurs. And to me, I get a little bit frustrated sometimes when I hear it because it's a little bit superficial. And sometimes I think it's a little bit like selling false hope to the hopeless. When we do that, we need to, as you said.
Hi guys, welcome to the show where we learn from the people who have followed their passion to achieve great success and have impacted many lives. If you're new here, then please do consider subscribing to this channel. Don't forget to hit the bell icon. This episode is being recorded in association with Let's Localize, an organization with a mission to foster micro contributions from communities and businesses to support schools for their need of time, skill, and funding. I'm your host, Ajay Mathur, and my guest today is an author, an entrepreneur, and a globally sought after speaker. He has been a president of a $100 million company and has operation in over 35 countries. He has served on a board of directors for the trade associations and has traveled more than 30 countries as a keynote speaker. He has become a highly sought after authority in personal and corporate transformation. So please welcome the man who shared his experiences with family trauma, chronic illnesses, and corporate crisis in the book called The Empowerment Paradox, which became an overnight bestseller on Amazon, Ben Woodward. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So before we go into the book, we will be talking a lot about his book, which is an amazing read. Before we go into that, I would like to know, what's your why? You had a very successful corporate career, and then you retired at the age of 40, if I'm not wrong. And then
Correct,
you started doing the personal transformation and corporate transformation work. And then now you've written a book. So what's your why?
Well, at the heart of it is we all want to make a contribution, don't we? You know, the sense of purpose, the fulfillment that we have in life, it doesn't just come from what we get. It really comes from what we give. And so being in a space and an opportunity where I had time and financial independence, that gave me a chance to really look inwards and go, what really matters most? And I looked at some of the challenges that I'd faced in life. Some of them were pretty brutal and pretty hard, pretty tough. And as you mentioned in the book, some of it was personal and some of it was commercial. And I thought, well, this is a great opportunity to help others. And if they knew what I knew before it came their way, maybe I could make a difference. And that's really what I wanted to do. It's just, even if it's with one or two people, you want to reach out and make a difference.
That's really powerful. I think that's the self-actualization piece from the Maslow's hierarchy of need.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the people who don't know about the book, it is called Empowerment Paradox. Oh, I can show you the cover page. It looks like this. And I have finished reading it cover to cover in a very short span of time. So this is my fastest read. If you can, for our audience, Ben, if you can give us a one-liner for the content of the book, like you have 3 paradoxes that you talk about in the book, and then you have 7 virtues. So if you just tell them one by one very quickly, and then we'll go deep into them.
Sure. Well, the premise of the book is that there is purpose in adversity. There are too many of us that experience it, but don't understand its value. And what I wanted to really emphasize front and center is, first of all, you know, we've got that old saying, haven't we, that time heals all wounds, but the reverse is also true. Time also wounds all heals. Yeah, if we can get our heads around that. So if we can appreciate that as we go through our journey in life, regardless of the different experiences that we're having, we are going to experience adversity. Something is going to trip us up. It's not going to be, sometimes it's our own doing, sometimes it's outside of us, and it happens to us, and not because of us, but just because of external circumstances. But if we can appreciate that sometimes there can be value in it, and we can learn how to respond to it and become transformed for the better by it, then all of a sudden our approach to it will change. And what we become as a consequence will change. And that's really the premise of the book, that there's actually far more than three paradoxes. Every virtue possesses in some degree a different paradox within it. And there is subtle interplay with each of them that creates even more paradoxes. So there's layers and layers of paradoxes that exist. You take the example of the virtue of hard work. The paradox there is that we need to work as if everything depends on us and simultaneously appreciate, respect the fact that it doesn't. Yeah. Otherwise, we'll get wonderfully big-headed when we achieve our goals and think it's all because of me. And it's rarely because it's all because of me. Yeah. There's always that interconnected framework that we're a part of, that network of other people that helps to see us succeed, overcome, and become who we want to become, or achieve the goals that we want to achieve. At the same time, the humility that we need to move forward, to confront our issues, to be transformed, and to become something better, it requires us to acknowledge, paradoxically, that we are both nothing and everything at the same time. And that's a really tough one to get our head around. And the example that I often use with that is as a father, when my wife is pregnant right now, and in the new year, we're going to have a new baby. And that little baby, if you were to put her in a room by herself, independent, on her own, she's not going to last too long before she dies. So independently, she's nothing in the sense of what she can contribute and do. But to us, as her parents, she's everything. Yeah, all of a sudden, already she's not even born yet, and she means the world to us. Yeah, from the moment she's born, that love just expands, and it expands, and it expands, and it expands, and her value is everything. And yet, independently by herself, she's nothing to begin with. So when we can appreciate the interconnectedness of those two concepts and bring that into the present moment for us as adults, what does that mean? It means that my capacity to achieve and to become more and to be self-empowered doesn't rely exclusively on me and my independent skill set. It actually depends on a broader network. And we need to appreciate the interconnectedness that we have as communities, as families, as societies, and that our collective strength helps to increase and improve our individual strength as well. And that to me is something that we certainly need to do a better job of from a societal perspective.
Okay, so let's go a little bit deep into the virtues then. Your first one is the disciplined heart, isn't it? And in that one, you talk about finding your why and finding your passion, which is now such a popular and such a difficult question. There's a lot of information on it, find your passion. And some people talk about finding your why is driven from the experiences, like intense personal experiences that people have, and that they found what they really want to do, what's the purpose in their life. But that's not the case with, I believe, 80-90% of people.
Yeah.
So for them, how do you advise them to how they can justify their why or their passion, or how they can even find it in the first place?
I love this question because, like you said, it's almost pop culture, isn't it? To talk about finding your passion, following your passion, and monetizing your passion if you're speaking to entrepreneurs. And to me, I get a little bit frustrated sometimes when I hear it because it's a little bit superficial. And sometimes I think it's a little bit like selling false hope to the hopeless. When we do that, we need to, as you said, dig deeper into what this really means. When I talk about the first virtue of a disciplined heart, it's not so much discover. Yes, we want to discover our purpose and our why, but it's really about disciplining ourselves to the point where we will pursue what matters most. We've got to want the consequences of what we want. Yeah, I'll give you an example. I was at a conference, a meeting where I was doing a workshop in Birmingham, England, a number of years ago. And we were talking about this principle of having a why, that if you have a strong why, you'll be able to find the relevant how in getting your job done, right? And so we were talking about this from an entrepreneurial perspective. What is your why? What's your reason for being in business, and so on? And this one lady put her hand up at the front of the class, right? She was on the front row, enthusiastic, eager to be there. And her eyes were all afire with excitement. And she says, "Oh, I've got a very strong reason for being here." And she said, I'm in the health and wellness industry, and I want my clients to really appreciate the value of my products because they help you have a better, healthier life. My reason for that is I've just overcome a terminal disease. And so, gosh, do I appreciate and value good health right now, right? I've got a new perspective on it, a new lease of life. And she was very dynamic, very excited about this. The lady behind her kind of almost folded her arms like this, a little bit, she looked a little disgruntled by what she was hearing. And then eventually she raises her hand and she goes, "I've got a question," right? And I could tell it was a concern more than a question. And I said, "Yes, what's your question?" And she said, "I've got a concern with that." She said, "I haven't had a terminal disease to overcome. I'm not saying I want one," right? She said, "but I haven't had that big, overwhelming experience that so many successful people have had that gives me a compelling why that drives me forward." She said, "I feel like a big tree with little roots." Yeah. And I thought, what a profound statement. So I asked the audience, I said, how many of you feel the same? How many of you feel like a big tree with little roots? You've got a desire to achieve something great, but you feel like your why, your purpose is lacking. It's shallow. And about 80% of the audience put their hand up. Yeah. And I thought this really becomes the focus of our message right now. So I said, "Well, what do you think the solution is? Let's talk about this, because this is a critical issue." The answer is in your metaphor. If the top of the tree is, using this as an analogy, represents your vision. I want to achieve more. I want to become more. I want to be prosperous. I want to be successful, and so on. And maybe we can shape that in different ways with my career, in my family life, with my physical well-being, however we choose to define it. I want to be the best version of myself. We've got that. That's my vision. But the root system in this analogy become your desires. What drives your desires? What feeds your desires? And the challenge is these two things don't grow at the same time or pace, do they? So I could be in an event where I hear a motivational speaker, and in a moment, the lights go on and I catch the vision of what I want to do or pursue. This is it. But my desires, my commitment, my determination, my wanting, my real wanting, that doesn't grow at the same pace, because that's connected to character. And character can pull us back, can't it? We can catch the moment, that spark of inspiration in a moment. But to really be able to follow through requires something else. And that's often why adversity or suffering becomes a component in that process, because when we suffer, it causes us to fight for something. How badly do you want it? Are you going to give up, give in, or are you going to keep fighting? And how much are you going to keep fighting? How long are you going to keep fighting? So we often find our purpose really through two fundamental triggers, I think, because what I'm not saying is suffering is the catalyst for all meaningful growth. It's not the case. Yeah. I'm not an advocate for unnecessary suffering. It plays a part. The other part is service. Yeah. So as we serve others, as we contribute to others, as we make a difference to others, we can find meaning and purpose and value there. And that can motivate us on, in the same way that suffering and adversity can make us fight for something and discover what our real values, what our real cause and reason for being is. Those two things, I think, weigh in equal balance: service or suffering, those two things. But yeah, it's really all about going, I've got to discipline my heart and want the consequences of what I want. And that takes time, which is why I'm not a huge advocate of we can all monetize our passion. Unfortunately, that's not the way the world works. Yeah. but we can get great at something that's of value. We can understand what our core principles are, and we can discipline our hearts and change who we become over time, because what we repeatedly desire over time is what we will eventually become. Yeah. And that's where the true fulfillment comes, in who we become.
First of all, I like the analogy of victory with little roots. That's really cool. Sounds great. And I think a lot of people will be able to relate with that. Now, between the suffering and service, now you don't have control over the sufferings that you might get. But the service is the bit that you can do. And when you talk about desire, find your desire. And, for me, I don't know about others, but for me, desires also do keep changing. Right?
Yeah.
So I think the key here is to do the service and keep doing it, not just in one area, but maybe in another area, maybe wherever you don't know where you will find that deep desire, which really help you identify what exactly is my passion and what I want to do. So I think that's one thing that a good takeaway for me, at least, that in order to find why.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. This is the thing as well, is desires grow over time as well. Maybe our desire starts small, but we can feed it. Yeah. And that's the beauty of it. We've got to play the long game. That's why we have life. Yeah. It's a long game journey. It's a marathon, not a sprint. We live in an age right now where everyone is becoming increasingly more impatient and more demanding of the present moment to give them everything that they want here and now. Yeah, technology does that for us, doesn't it? At the click of a button, we can order our dinner, we can get it delivered to our door, we can sign up for a course, we can get the answer to a question, we can be in a meeting with our boss, you name it. Everything is so instantaneous. But the reality is, for life, it's not instantaneous. The achievement of meaningful goals does not happen in a moment. The development of character does not happen in an instant. And so the development and acquisition of strong, meaningful desires that will keep us anchored to the right path, it doesn't happen overnight. We've got to train it. And we often think that I will follow my desire. Action follows desire. Yeah. So desire comes first. I follow it. That leads to action, and action leads to results. But it can also work in the opposite way. If I can sit down and cognitively identify, this is the right next step. Yeah. I don't desire it much right now, but I know I should do it. As I take the action, the desire can come. And it might not come immediately, but if I repeatedly commit and follow up and keep the commitments there, eventually the desire gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And so we can strengthen that through action, not just rely on the desire to start the process.
That's one of my favorite words. I have 3 favorite words. One is believe, one is action, and one is decision making.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, very true. Very true.
Okay. So there is one more thing that you talk about in Disciplined Heart, is about gratefulness. And that's another topic that you hear a lot about, being grateful to small things.
Yeah.
I have practiced it to some extent, but I struggle to understand how you could be realistically grateful, because a lot of people will tell you, okay, you know what, everything that you see, you should be grateful for. Yeah, for small things like me talking to you. You are in US, I'm in London. Oh, I'm grateful for that. Yeah, great, fine. My computer is working. I have a computer. I'm sitting, I have light. There are a lot of small things that I could be grateful for. But how does it work really? If I start to be grateful for every small thing, what will happen scientifically? What is the science behind it? And how could I be realistically grateful to take the most out of this experience?
Well, first of all, I think, again, this is another one of these things that is a process, not an event. Yeah. We do hear, like you said, a lot of people say, be grateful for the little things. Be grateful that the sun rose today and you got nice weather, or you woke up. Be grateful that you even woke up this morning and you were able to get out of bed. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, okay, I get that. But still right now, maybe my life is really hard. Maybe I just got furloughed. Maybe I just lost my job. Maybe my marriage is not in a good shape. So I'm not feeling it, right? This is the hard thing, isn't it? This is where it gets complicated. That's where it becomes, again, you don't want it just to be nice phraseology or a nice turn of phrase or a nice message that sounds good. This isn't poetry we're talking about. This is legitimate, life-changing stuff. But it does require discipline. And this is part of the work where we need to work on ourselves. And it doesn't come in a moment. And often the gratitude will come maybe after an event, yeah, when we see things more clearly. Because sometimes if I'm going through some adversity right now, when I'm in the midst of it, maybe right now it's hard to feel grateful. Maybe when you come out the other side and then something happens that was unexpected, that was positive, you go, now I see why I needed to experience that. Now I'm thankful. Yeah. In that moment, we can be grateful, when we're going through something that is, more apparently consequential or impactful on our lives. What helps us to get there is starting off small and deliberately looking to be grateful for the little things. Is that relevant? 100%. Is there science behind it? Yes. We've got lots of different systems, for example, that our body is made up of. Circulatory system, the skeletal system, the lymphatic system, for example. But our limbic system, our emotional system, is actually an open loop system. All these other systems that I mentioned are closed loop, meaning they are self-regulating. Yeah. As we talk, I don't have a direct impact on your skeletal system, right? You don't need me to make sure that your lymphatic system is working fine. Yeah. They're totally separate things. However, our emotional systems, when we are in the same room, are interconnected. We need that open loop in order for humanity to continue to exist. Otherwise, at a very basic level, when my child cries, if I had a closed limbic system, I would feel nothing at all. I wouldn't feel inclined to pick her up or him up. And what would happen? Well, the human species would not be around as we see it now. We need that interaction. So what we see is, again, that there's been research shown when we have good relationships, when we can foster that, and gratitude is a way that we can foster our relationships. And I'm using this as a specific example here of something that we can be grateful for, the relationships that we've got. And I think certainly in 2020, one of the things that we need to really look to provide some balance in our lives is the relationships that we have. Yeah. But there is evidence that has been supported now that shows that middle-aged men that lived in isolation, for example, when they experienced stress or some type of crisis emotionally, they had a 3 times greater risk of experiencing heart attacks and that type of experience. Biologically, there is an impact there. When we have relationships that are strong, when we are nurtured, when we are connected, when we have those types of experiences that bind us in a healthy, positive way, our physical health is improved. It's not just that we need it for balance and for survival. It actually improves us and strengthens us physically as well as emotionally. So yes, there is an interplay here with when I can learn to be grateful for, like I said, something like the relationships that I have, even if it's a struggling one. If I can be grateful for, what this can bring to me and what I can add to it and how I can be changed by it, it will provide a greater physiological impact that will, over the long term, be a benefit to my life. It's remarkable. But like I said, from a practical perspective, how do I build out the gratitude? Again, it's small, simple steps. The objective, we've got to look at it from the long-term vision and then work backwards. What's the long-term vision of being grateful for as many things as possible? It's not really, look at it like a strategy versus tactics. If I'm looking to be grateful for the weather, if I'm looking to be grateful for something in the disagreement that I just had that I'm feeling stressed about, and okay, I've got to try to be grateful for, why? Okay, my tire just broke down, I'm late for work. Why should I be grateful for this, right? And you're trying, if you get preoccupied with the thing, the moment, that thing that you're trying to be grateful for, you might miss the overarching picture. Yeah, the overarching message here is if I can develop a grateful heart, that will change my way of being. Yeah. And that's something that requires practice. It's not about what we choose to be grateful for in that particular moment, though we want to be grateful for as many things as we can, because that certainly intensifies, increases our happiness, and that has a positive impact on longevity and all sorts. But if we can develop and foster a grateful heart, that's what that practice is all about. And that's what will change our perspective in such a significant way. And you look at that, you want further science on that. Think of the law of attraction here. When I am someone that has a more grateful heart and is a more thankful person, that makes me happier, more upbeat, more optimistic, more positive in my mindset, in my attitude, my outlook. I'm more, realistic versus pessimistic in my thinking when I confront challenges and adversity. What is the impact when it comes to networking, relationship building, career development, and all sorts when you've got that frame of mind and that type of heart? What's the impact? Can you see the difference there? How does that impact relationships when I've got a more thankful heart, a more grateful heart? How does that impact relationships, marriages, long-term relationships, relationships with children, and so on? When we're going through difficult times, struggling with things, it gives us staying power when the going gets tough, to endure and to move forward and to not break apart. There are so many people that are breaking apart right now. I was speaking with a psychiatrist last week who said here in the States, their industry is overwhelmed this year in 2020 because of all of the emotional turmoil that people are experiencing. Therapists, psychologists are bursting at the seams right now with new work, new clients, and it's getting harder and harder to find therapists here because people are struggling. And if we can, just like I said, if we are fostering that grateful heart, what would that do to our capacity to endure and to move forward and to stay strong and to stay together? I think there is a profound impact there that can be had.
Yeah, that's really powerful. So the being grateful is a state of being. So it's not just saying that I'm grateful for something. It's just have this in yourself, that you just feel grateful.
Yeah, that's the objective. That's the goal. Because it's otherwise, it's like, from a commercial perspective, it's like getting caught up with tactics versus strategy. The overarching strategy is what I'm striving to become and achieve and develop. Yeah. And that's what the gratefulness is about. And the seven virtues in the book, it's about what we become. It's the possession and the acquisition of these virtues combined. What does that make us? Who does that make us be? That's what it's all about. And a grateful heart is a powerful heart to have when we're dealing with adversity.
Super powerful. In one of the virtues that you talked about was faith and creating belief system. And a lot of people do struggle with the limiting beliefs, right? How do you curtail them and cultivate your belief system, really? What are any system that you use, or any tips?
Yeah, this is a great question. And again, with each of the virtues that I discuss, I try to take it from the perspective of, what if I'm struggling with this virtue? Yeah. It's not just simply about saying we need to have well-nurtured faith. Yeah. I want to look at it from the perspective of, what if I don't have faith in me? What if I have faith, but it's not enough? Yeah. How do I develop it? How do I get it stronger? Which is really your question. Yeah. If I want to achieve more, if I want to become a better version of myself, if I want to get through this adversity, but I'm finding it hard, and I know a key component to my success is me. Yeah. But here's the challenge. The key component to my achievement is me, but I doubt me. Yeah. What do I do now? That's the tough thing. And first of all, anyone that feels that, I want you to know I relate, because there's been countless times in my life where I've doubted myself and I haven't had sufficient faith in me to move forward. And that's why this chapter, this virtue, is so critical, because it was born, as with the other virtues, through brutal experience of lacking on my part. Yeah. So first of all, there needs to become initially some self-awareness. So if I'm doubting myself, if there is some lack on my part that I see in me, where does that come from? So I need to begin by asking myself some pretty important questions, and practicing again. And everything is a practice. One thing that I make very clear in the book is I am not a fan of the pop culture principle of you can have it all now. Yeah, that is peddling false belief and false hope to the hopeless. That's unfair to do that. If you want great, meaningful results, results take time to measure, and certain practices and virtues and habits take time to develop. Time is important, and we've got to give it its room to breathe. In that big tree, little roots principle or metaphor, what is critical with any great tree to grow? Time. Yeah. And it's the same for us. We need that virtue, that quality of time to allow these virtues to mature. So critically, we need to say, okay, what am I lacking? If I am doubting myself, where does that come from? And it's important to identify that some of the beliefs that we might hold about ourselves may actually be incorrect. This is the important thing. So, for example, maybe I'm doubting myself because I catastrophize. If anything's going to go wrong, it's going to be a huge catastrophe, and it'll be all my fault. Yeah. And then I'll look terrible. Yeah. Maybe I will be an all or nothing thinker. Yeah. And I will discount the positives. Maybe I look at my life and I doubt myself because I focus on all the things that I got wrong, and I don't balance it with the things that I actually got right. Maybe I'm a perfectionist, and I go, well, that's a good thing. I'm a terrible perfectionist, unfortunately. Yeah, this is something I continue to have to work on. But I used to think perfectionism was good. It means I've got a high standard. It means I've got a standard of excellence that is, that makes me stretch and reach and achieve and win my goals and all that kind of stuff. Well, actually, any virtue taken to extreme can become a vice. Yeah. So having high standards, if it becomes anything less than 100% is failure, that's not a high standard. That's self-abuse. Yeah. So we need to understand that sometimes we might have some thinking patterns or ways of looking at ourselves that are not true, not correct. So we need to take some time, first of all, to understand, how do I see me? What is my perception of myself? And then, is it really true? Is it really true? And be willing to challenge it and get a balanced perspective. And then, how do we fix it? How do we evolve? We need to start creating some new beliefs. I can't just say, okay, I'm a perfectionist, I need to stop doing that. I've got to replace it with something. It's like light and dark. If I flick the light switch off and turn the light out in my room, it's immediately replaced with the darkness. Lightness and darkness can't coexist. Yeah. And it's the same with, if I'm wanting to replace a weakness or eliminate a weakness, I need to replace it with a strength. I can't just leave a void or a hole in my character. There's got to be some replacement somewhere. So again, it's a process. And what I would say is, depending on what we're striving to change or achieve or become, as we increase our faith in ourselves, we want to certainly have measured wins along the way. And with those measured wins, so that we can see and mark our progress. Yeah. Because like I said, too often we look at the wrong things and measure our failures. Yeah. And what we're doing wrong and where we're dropping the ball. If we want to reverse that, then we've got to look at, say, okay, this is where I'm going to win. This is what success looks like in this. And I'm going to measure this by having these key performance indicators that will identify how I'm doing, so that as I go, I can win and I can see the progress.
This all discussion is actually, we're talking about limiting beliefs and all of those things, and they are more relevant to adults, like grown-up people. But when you think about kids, because a lot of kids also do watch this particular channel, so when we are born, like 2-year, 3-year-old kid, their belief is everything is possible. And somewhere on the way, that is broken.
Yeah.
And then we realize that nothing is possible when we are grown up. Like, so in that period, when we are actually breaking down the robust beliefs that we have, how can we stop it from being so bad? Of course, there are few beliefs when a kid make no sense, but still, I mean, is there a way that we don't even go into that deep ditch?
Yeah,
and,
this is great. This is great, because and this is why the first part of the book is such an important read, because we've got this Victorian notion that has been built into us that childhood should be preserved and protected, that childhood innocence should be protected from any of the hurts and difficulties of life, that is reserved for adulthood. Yeah. And so because we have that belief, and it's perfectly, I totally get it. I've got, like I said, I've got 7 children, right? So when I look at their innocent, beautiful, gorgeous little faces, my natural desire is to protect them from any hurt, any harm. Yeah. I want to keep them safe. You kind of do this all the time. Yeah. But the reality is life happens. There's no demarcation for when adulthood arrives and now we're prepared to suffer or deal with adversity. We see as children, and even with infants, exposure to illness, disease, affliction, divorce, poverty, disappointment, all of these types of things. And as they go through their teenage years or their childhood years, bullying and definitely social, online social pressures, like never before. That type of exposure is brutal now. So they experience it at a young age, and it's getting younger and younger. And now what we see is the need for mental strength, mental well-being is getting increasingly stronger, because challenges with mental illness or mental health, like anxiety and depression and so on, are starting to impact children and teenagers at younger and younger ages now. Yeah. So this point that you're raising is so important, because what we want to do is, yes, recognize these virtues, but we want to marry it at a young age with understanding, guys, life isn't easy. We're going to have some hard times, but I want you to know that that's normal. That's okay. These things happen, but this is how you can deal with it. If we can develop this type of character, if we can have these types of virtues in our possession, then when the tough stuff comes, you don't need to get shaken. You don't need to fall over. You don't need to break. And you don't need to lose that wonderful childhood innocence that makes you want to reach for the stars and achieve great things. You can have both. Yeah. And that's why it's so important. This, to me, is perhaps the most important question that you've asked on this entire interview. We need to get the balance of the two. Understand that tough stuff is there, it's real, but we've got to have the self-compassion as well, and develop that, nurture that self-talk as children and as teenagers, where we can go easy on ourselves when we suddenly start to get exposed, because that's where that change comes. We start to become more aware of social norms and expectations, and we also start to become aware in our childhood at these earlier ages of my own vulnerabilities and weaknesses. And as I do, then the negative self-talk can creep in. What we've got to do is be practicing and mindful of self-compassion and go, hey, we all have weaknesses. We're all vulnerable. We all get hurt. It's part of the human experience, and it begins from the moment we're born. Yeah.
Yeah. And thanks for your comments, by the way. And you mentioned about the mental health and finding strength in your vulnerabilities, and you've publicly admitted, and you've written in your book also, that you had bipolar disorder, and you believed that it was a strength rather than a weakness. I was curious to find out, how did you convert that into a strength, and how can everybody can do it, really?
Yeah. So when I was diagnosed originally with bipolar disorder, first, I was initially thrilled because it gave context to my suffering and my struggle, right? So it sounds weird to say you were excited to get diagnosed with bipolar disorder. If you'd been struggling with it for a long time without a diagnosis, trust me, you'd be grateful when that came, because it gave understanding and meaning to what was going on. But after that, I also went through a period of time where, yeah, I kind of kept it private. It was my secret ordeal, my secret struggle. And a lot of us do that if we're struggling with anxiety or mental health or depression or what have you. We'll make that a private battle, and it becomes an inward thing, and that's dangerous. It's not healthy. It's good to talk about things. But this is what I found as a keynote speaker. On one occasion, I was at an event, and I thought, I'm going to experiment here. I was brought in as the guest keynote speaker. I had two assignments. On the first day, it was to a group of entrepreneurs. On the first day, I was to talk about, all of the benefits of success. I was the poster child of what they were striving to achieve and become as the guest at that event, which was lovely, right? The next day was talking about all of the barriers and obstacles and the challenges and how we can confront them and deal with the tough stuff and in order to succeed. So they had a good balance there. Well, I'd grabbed the credibility of the audience, I guess, on the first day, established the relationship, built the rapport. And on the second day was, okay, time to talk about the tough stuff. And I thought, I'm going to experiment here, and I'm going to do something I've not done before at a keynote address. And that was, and this was before I published the book, right? So this was an unknown message. And I said, we're going to talk about how to deal with adversity today. I said, but I want you to know I've got an advantage over you guys. I have something of a superpower. I want you to know that. So, it gives me insights that you don't have. And this superpower is I have bipolar disorder. Well, they all kind of sat back in their chairs like, what? I did not imagine you to have this, right? You don't look like you've got a mental illness. Well, that's because you've got a stigma perhaps around what it might look like or how it might express itself. Yeah, maybe there's some misunderstanding there. But I said, look, everyone has a pendulum swing of their emotions. My highs and my lows might swing from here to here. For me, with my disorder, it goes out like that. It augments the highs and it augments the lows, really stretches it out. I said, and in those stretches, it has forced me to learn some very humbling but very important lessons. Trust me, I know what hope looks like because I've been overwhelmingly hopeless. It's the total absence of something that has given me a total appreciation for what that virtue is and what it looks like. And so as a consequence, this is what I've learned. And I'm going to share with you some lessons now from what I have learned in dealing with my mental illness that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur. And off I went, and I shared the lessons. At the end of that workshop, not only was it like a standing ovation, but there were people with tears in their eyes. They came up. I would say the large majority of that audience connected with me on social media, have stayed in touch. And I've had more of a connection with that group probably than with any other group. And it taught me a powerful lesson that what I'm experiencing here is relatable. Other people are struggling. Other people are finding life hard. And it's, whether it's in business or in life or in relationships or at work or at school, wherever it is, all of us have got something we're struggling with. All of us will have something that bites us. And sometimes those things that bite us more than we want, or they keep on coming back to get us. Yeah, maybe it's a character flaw or vulnerability. We've all got something. But when I was open and vulnerable, it allowed everyone else in the audience subconsciously to be open back and reciprocate. And when they did that, they absorbed so much more because of that reciprocation that we did, that took place. And it was powerful. And now as a consequence, I wouldn't trade this for anything, because the lessons that I've learned in my extremities have provided great resource, great help, great strength to others when they need it and when they don't know where to go. And the feeling that comes from being an answer to someone else's prayer or to someone else's struggle or suffering when they're going through a hard time and they don't know what to do, but you've maybe walked a few steps ahead, even if it is just a few steps, and you go, I know this path. Let me tell you what I've learned. And when you help that person, the feeling that comes from that moment, I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's the best feeling in the world. So that's why it's my superpower. It creates the best feeling because it does so much good when you share it out.
That is very powerful, and you need a lot of courage and guts to talk about these things. And you have now openly, you have opened up about your family trauma, which was quite difficult situation. I've read it in the book and I've watched you talking also about it. You need a lot of courage, and I don't know anybody else who could come out and do what you did in your family situation, especially. And yeah, talking about your vulnerabilities, it's really powerful. If you share it, then yeah, not only the pain reduces, but it also gives you more strength.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm grateful. It's like you said, it was scary. When I wrote the book, there were certain parts that did scare me, that did make me a little bit nervous. I was like, oh, should I put that in? Should I not? Once it's in print, it's there forever. But what I've found since it's been published, the amount of people that have come back, reached out, connected, and said, that's changed my life. That's really helped. That's made a difference. That started me on my path. Yeah, I go, well, I would do it 10 times over. Yeah.
One of the other virtues that you have is about patience. And then you also have, more important, the one which I really liked was liberated past. You talk about it a little bit differently than what I would have thought before I started the chapter. You talk about forgiveness and forgiving other and forgiving yourself. I just wanted to know some of the key actionable steps that one can take in order to not just forgiving others, but especially forgiving yourself for the baggage that you're carrying.
Yeah, that's that, interestingly, is the place that most people go to when they ask me about a liberated past. Yeah, I think we all collectively find it easier to forgive others than we do to forgive ourselves, don't we?
So true. So
yeah.
true.
Yes. So how do we practice? And this is, for me, has been the hardest thing, because, what our sense of identity is built into what we repeatedly do. So if I've repeatedly dropped the ball, made mistakes, or I'm just human, yeah. And so being human means I'm imperfect, I'm vulnerable, I have weaknesses as well as strengths, then they all feed into my identity. I can project a certain image societally, yeah, in the workplace, at home, to my friends and family, but inwardly, I also see all of the vulnerabilities and weaknesses as well. Yeah. And so my inner self-image, my inner sense of identity can often be in conflict or in contradiction to what is being projected. And that's where the challenge is. We need to get some harmony here and feel a sense of autonomy with who we really are. And in order to move forward, to have that transformation be truly complete, we can't experience that and get to the best place in the future if we're still anchored to and holding on to the past. So yeah, how do we do that? The critical part for me is what I just mentioned earlier, this term self-compassion. Self-compassion is so important. And again, everything that I talk about here is a practice and a journey versus an event. We practice this because especially if I'm talking to an adult and we are holding on to things that are in the past from a long time ago, we've been holding on for a long time. So this is an entrenched habit that we're experiencing and we're needing to confront and deal with. If we're teenagers or children listening to this and we're wanting to let go of the past, good news is hopefully it'll be a little easier for you because you don't have the time where you're anchored into bad habits. Yeah. So this principle of self-compassion again becomes very important. again, where we can speak kindly to ourselves, be mindful of the inner dialogue or monologue that's taking place. What is it that I'm saying to myself when I look at who I am?
When I'm alone.
When I'm alone, what am I saying to myself? What is the language? And you know what? Sometimes my language with myself has been brutal. And here's and if
not sometimes.
And if you were to put that into the context of someone else, and I sometimes do this as a reminder to myself, and I just go, Ben, say what you're saying to yourself right now, say it to your wife. Would you dare say that? Say it to one of your children. Would you dare say that? If someone came to you struggling, with one of their problems that they're wanting to overcome, or a life issue they're dealing with, and they are saying this to you, would you validate that? Or would you say, hey, hang on a second, ease up, go easy on yourself? Yeah. So we need to talk to ourselves and establish a conversation in the third person and start to have this inner dialogue versus a monologue, and talk to ourselves like we are our best friend. What would we say to our best friend? And say it to us. And then, like I said, understand that we need to get a balanced perspective of our weaknesses and our strengths, the things that we've done wrong, the things we've done right. And that does require mindfulness. And I think this is one of the reasons why mental health is becoming increasingly important as a subject, is because technology is front and center for so many of us, especially in the younger ages, where we've got digital natives versus you and I that are digital immigrants, perhaps. What we see there is time being spent on technology is going through the roof. And the more time we spend there, even if it's mindless, I'm just browsing through Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or what have you, and it's not productive time, my mind is still somewhere else. We need to give ourselves some space to deliberately think about ourselves and how we talk about ourselves, how our day has been, how we want to go forwards tomorrow, and give ourselves some room to just also let our mind be empty. Yeah, empty it all out and be still. Give space for stillness and for quiet and for that moment to breathe emotionally. Give our space, our emotions space there. Meditate. So to me, that's really important.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a really interesting conversation, and I was thinking initially that I'll be talking to you about all 7 virtues. I've kind of touched upon 5 of those. I want to talk about one more, which was about willful surrender. And in that you talk about the sunk cost fallacy.
Yeah.
So the more we invest in something, the harder it is to abandon it.
Yeah.
Because once we put your heart into something, you don't want to admit it, that it's time to move.
Yeah.
It is. How do you deal with that kind of situation? Because that happens quite often with a lot of people, because it's this kind of world that we live in.
Yeah.
So give us some actionable steps in order to come out of something that we really have put a lot of effort in achieving in the first place.
The first step is to go back to what is my overarching vision or objective. Yeah, we've got to go back to that, because when we're preoccupied with continuing to invest in something where the value has gone, for fear of loss, for fear of failure, for fear of bad reputation, or what have you, we've got to recognize that the more we do that, the bigger the risk is. Yeah. So there needs to come a time where stopping happens. When's it going to be? So to help us to stop, we need to go back to the beginning. What was the reason we started in the first place? What were we trying to accomplish and achieve? So when we can go back to the beginning and regain our clarity on the mission and objective of that project, that activity, or that approach to what we're investing in, then we can start to look and say, look, and again, The virtue here to really apply is honesty. So we start by being clear with our vision. What were we trying to achieve? Second, we've got to be honest. And this is where the willful surrender comes in. When I talk about, because the term surrender sounds like you're giving in. Yeah. It's like, the connotations are, I'm in a battle and I surrender. My hands go up and I give in to my enemy. Right. This isn't that. This is a very bold, very courageous, very demanding step for us to take, because what it requires of us when we surrender, it's like I said, it's not giving up or giving in. What it is, it's letting go of the incorrect beliefs that we hold on to about ourselves, about our circumstances, and about our futures. When we can let go and surrender those things, and that's the honesty thing. I've got to be honest here and say, okay, the time has passed on this. The original goal was this. It is not delivering. I've got to be honest. The willful surrender, now I need to let go. And that's the step. It's kind of a 3-step process. Go back to the vision. What was the primary objective? Now honestly review it. Understand your incorrect beliefs that you're holding on. And now deliberately, with boldness and courage, let go and move forward. But again, the great thing is we get now. The scary thing is it feels a little bit like letting go of a rope. Yeah, I'm hanging on. I don't want to let go, because if I let go, I'm going to fall and I'm going to hurt myself. That's one of the reasons why I'm holding on, because I've invested a lot. I've sacrificed a lot. There's a lot of me in this. And if I let go, then I'm going to lose a lot and it's going to hurt me. Right. So a part of that letting go is also grabbing onto something else. What do we replace it with? Okay. So if this project, if I'm in business, if this part of my business is not working, if this part of me is not right, if it's a personal thing, if I need to let go of that, then in order to move forwards, I'm letting go of the past here in order to cling onto a brighter, better opportunity in the future. What does that look like? So again, go back to the beginning. What's my objective? What's my mission? I'm not meeting the need here, but this is, through evaluation of what I've done, this is the next step. So I can pivot now. Yeah. And I can create new space and move into a new landscape. And it's not complete abandon. Yeah. So let's get the mindset right. I'm not catastrophizing. I don't need to be all or nothing thinking. This isn't a total failure. I have learned from this, and go through, what have I learned? What do I need to let go of? What do I need to keep hold of? And what do I move into now moving forwards? That makes a big difference.
It becomes even more complex when you have others involved.
Yeah.
Just what you might have invested in something, but you might have invested in some people also.
Yeah. 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 And sometimes, yeah, from a business perspective, yeah, there may be the sunk cost principle applying in an employee, a member of your team. And you're going, I've trained these guys up. I've given them all of this resource. We've done all of this work together and it's not working out. And we've got the relationship maybe as well. You've got the rapport and the relationship built in. What do I do? And you've got to be strong enough to do the right thing. It's not easy. These virtues are important, but they're not easy. And so, it's one of these things, isn't it? We want to be empowered, but to really be empowered takes courage. And it takes commitment and it takes devotion, which is why step number 1 is that disciplined heart. Yeah, you're going to need that. And what you'll see is all of these virtues, they just intertwine and one feeds and strengthens the other. They're cyclical, they're layered, they're multifaceted, they're interconnected, and they all support each other.
Super powerful. And I mean, there are a lot of questions that are coming in my head right now, which I want to ask, but just in the interest of some time, I would ask you my question, which I ask all my guests, which is, what do you think are the top 3 skills or behaviors that one needs in order to grow and be successful, but these skills and behaviors are not taught in schools?
That's a great question. I think a critical skill in order to succeed and be successful is first recognize that it's not about you. My life is not about me. This is one of the paradoxes really in the book. Yeah. Mm. It's when we realize, and it goes back to what we said right at the beginning, be service-centered. You know, don't be all selfish. Life is not a snatch and grab. Yeah. If we can devote ourselves to the service of others and learn how to be mindful of other people's needs, you know, that's not an academic skill, it's an emotional skill, but it's an emotional skill that will pay dividends. The other one is understand the power of networks. We do not succeed in isolation. So understand the power, not just of what you can give to others, but the power of being networked well with others so that that giving can be reciprocated. Yeah, and it will be reciprocated well. And the other one is to believe in yourself. If we can foster a greater sense of personal identity in knowing who we really are and what we're really capable of, I believe many people would achieve much more.
Thank you for those. And now that you have retired at 40 something, we've authored your first book 3 months ago, I think, or 4 months ago. Mm-hmm. Now what next? What's your mission? What's your vision for the next 10 years?
Well, now it's getting out there and spreading the message of my book. You know, I'm grateful that there are a number of different companies and industries and associations that are reaching out and connecting and saying, come talk to us, share this message. That's a thrill for me to be able to do that. Having these conversations is fantastic. I also have a couple of consulting businesses that I'm a part of as well, where I get to help both big and small companies to do better. I work a lot with entrepreneurs and supporting entrepreneurs achieve their goals. And that is just a pleasure to help people that are big thinkers, big dreamers, help them to go out and get it. So,
great. So how can finally people reach you?
The easiest way is through my website, ben-woodward.com. That's got my email address there. You can reach out directly. If you've got any additional questions after listening to this, you can email me through that website. And all of my social media handles are there as well, if you want to connect with me on social media.
Great. Thank you very much. I'll put all the links in the description below so that if somebody wants to get hold of you, then they can. Ben, thank you very much. I'm really honored to have you on the show, and I so enjoyed it thoroughly. I have so many more questions, which I will stay connected with you definitely.
Excellent.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. I really
appreciate it. My pleasure. Thank you. Great being with you.
Thanks. And guys, if this interview has given you some insight about life and how things work, then please do check out his book. It looks like this, and then it's here.
Yeah.
It's called The Empowerment Paradox. It's an amazing, brilliant read. I did it cover to cover in 4 or 5 hours. I couldn't stop reading it. Awesome read. And if you have not yet done so, and if you find this channel valuable, then please do consider subscribing to this channel by clicking on the subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the bell icon so that you get notification to my next week's video. So till then, goodbye and take care.